Hi, I'm Dina Hoeynck, and this is my piece, Screen Time. It is a linoleum block print, and I was inspired by a photograph that my friend Angela took of her two children reading on their iPad together. So basically my process is I start with the photograph. So this is the original photo. It's a little grayed out because I drew over it when I traced it onto a linoleum block. So you can see on the back I have carbon paper, and this is actually like the negative image from where I was tracing all the details to see where the values and the shapes fall out on the block. Normally these blocks are 9 inches by 12 inches, the ones that I typically work with, but this one was, was 9 by 12, and because the image is a square aspect ratio, I actually had to cut it, which I had never done before. So you can see that basically it has a thin layer of linoleum, which is this soft kind of flexible material on top. It's basically a mixture of cork and oils that it becomes more brittle over time, and it can be cut in any direction, unlike wood. It's kind of grainless. I'll show you the carving tools in a second, but it's got the linoleum on the top and then a MDF or type board on the bottom. And the reason I work on these mounted blocks is because I do my printing on a letterpress, on a Vandercook press, which is, so things need to be mounted to type high. And this is just short of type high being, I think, 0.918 inches, so that it reaches the right level for the press to roll over it. So I actually was able to cut this on a table saw, which was pretty cool. So some guys, I was doing a workshop at Soulcraft last summer, and one of the guys at Soulcraft helped me cut my block, because I'm not a big, I love power tools, but I'm not trained on power tools. So I didn't want like a Tim Allen home improvement situation. So this is my block, and I'm going to show you the tools that I use to carve it. Once I have the image transferred by tracing, then I have this set of tools in my cute pencil case that I've had since I was like 12 years old. And this is a new one that I just got recently. This is by File, because I've seen a lot of people on Instagram like the File tools, and I love this. It's amazing. It is a, does it say on here? It doesn't, but it's a V-gouge. I'm gonna show that, see if it'll focus. So that means that the tip of it is shaped like the letter V. You can kind of see there. And this is a really small one. I think it's like 1.5 millimeters, 2 millimeters, something like that. And here's another one from File that is a U-gouge that I also am gonna say I think is around 2 millimeters in width. So those, a U-gouge versus a V-gouge makes a different shape on the block. So V-gouge is gonna make more of like a sharp line, a U-gouge is gonna make more of like a wider trough. This is my favorite, I can tell which ones are my favorite tools because they have the darkest handles. So there she is. This is my favorite V-gouge. This is a Japanese tool that I ordered from, I actually got it at a printmaking fair, a printmaking conference, but they're a great mail order company, McLean's. They're based out of, I want to say Oregon. I think they're in Portland, but they import all these Japanese tools and they're fantastic. So I have a whole set of the Japanese tools from McLean's, and then these are just like little pieces of rubber to protect the caps, or to protect the tips so that you don't have to sharpen them all the time. And I did not prep it for my video, but I also keep handy near me a honing block while I'm working. And I can share a picture or a link to that if anybody's interested. But the honing block is basically a piece of leather mounted onto a piece of wood, and then you put honing compound on it, and you can drag your tool across it, and it keeps the edge of the tool kind of shined and sharp without actually having to go to a whetstone and sharpen the tool. So in the years that I've had these, I've never really needed to sharpen them because they haven't been damaged in a way. They haven't gotten a big chunk taken out of them or a nick or a dent. So as long as I just use that honing tool, that honing block a couple times every probably like 10 minutes of cutting. For every 10 minutes of cutting, I'd say I have to go back to the honing block just to like keep the edge sharp. And that keeps it gliding smoothly through. So basically using those tools, what I'm doing is after I transfer the image onto the block, then the block is gonna have, you can't see it now because it's all inky, but it's gonna have a kind of drawing on it that does not have these lines to it. And that drawing is black on a tan surface. So the linoleum is the color that you can see showing through where it's been cut. And then I cover the whole thing with a thin layer of red. I stain it with red acrylic paint. And then as I make cuts, I can see the white coming through underneath, or the tan coming through underneath, with the red still on top and the black still on top. And it lets me kind of squint and look and figure out, what is this going to look like when it's printed? When that red turns to black from printing, how is this going to look? A lot of the time what I'll do is I'll pick up a line along the edge of a highlight like this. So I'll cut this line first, and then I'll cut toward that to give it that kind of like highlight and contour effect. I'm pointing at this area because I think that this area of this block came out especially beautiful. I really like that because it's a little more high contrast and the lines are a little chunkier. I think I tend to start with the faces because I know that if I mess up the face, then I have to scrap it and start over. Sometimes people do ask, what happens if you make a mistake? The answer is that's where you get creative. So that to me is the exciting part of doing relief printmaking in this fashion. If I make a mistake, I can't really go back. You kind of can. I did once. You can use Bondo, which is a car repair thing, but it's like a big process. And you wouldn't do it unless it was something like, oh, I did this right at the end and it was so perfect except for this one spot. Usually the approach is, if you make a mistake, you figure out how to incorporate that into the image and work with it. And sometimes we have happy accidents and sometimes we have unfortunate accidents. But when there are this many marks in an image, people don't notice the mistakes because they're looking at the movement and the contrast, and they don't notice things that when I look at it, my eye goes directly to them. So that is the block. And then when we're done cutting it, it gets locked up in the bed of a press, meaning it gets, locked up is what we say, but it basically means you put it down onto the press and then you use blocks of wood, which are called furniture, and little tightening things that have wrenches, which are called coins. And that holds it tight. Then a roller comes over it with ink and makes it all inky. And then I put the paper in and the paper goes over it next, and it transfers the ink from the block onto the paper. And I can do that a lot of times, but usually with these, I can get anywhere from 20 to 35 prints off of one block before the block starts getting kind of filled up with ink, and I would have to like strip it off and start again. So I usually just stop at that point, clean off whatever excess ink is on there and pack it away. And that'll be the size of my edition. So this one, the edition size, I don't have it handy because the print that I have is a artist proof, but again, I can post that later. But edition size on these will be anywhere, I think the edition size on this is like 18 or something. Edition size could be anywhere from like 18 to 35 on my prints usually. It's a relatively small edition, but not tiny. So here's the final print again. It's got a lot of reflection of the tree from outside my house, but you can see it in Cleveland Print Room's online gallery. And thank you for your time. If you have any questions, comment them and I'll answer them.